WPR. Can you hear us?
Okay, I'll be right back.
Yep.
Okay, guys, I'm about to go live, okay?
Hey, this is Jurgs from Lunchtime Happy Hour. I heard you, WWPR.
Harvey can watch the show if you want, okay? All right. Yep.
Oh, that was him.
I don't either, but it's 11. Y'all, he can watch the show, okay? If you absolutely need me, it's an emergency, come open my door, and that's fine. Just know that I might have to tell you to hold on for a second while I mute stuff, okay?
$14.90.
Hey, it's Jurger. We're standing by.
Okay, you can go on.
Okay, so that's connected, or
Yeah, you're on there. Go ahead.
okay, good enough. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll talk to you soon. All right, Matt, you ready? Or Blake, you ready?
I'm here, yeah.
Oh, I see your chat now, WWPR. All right, let's get started. Hey, gang. It's Friday. It's Jurgs. It's the Lunchtime Happy Hour. Haven't switched to a cocktail yet, but I do have coffee, and that's kind of key. You see the clouds behind me? I didn't change the backdrop. Many of you already know I've put a green screen on my wall, and to my right, that's the corner of the room. That's gonna be green tile, sound tiles. So you'll still see a green screen behind me. You'll see like Trump, Mega Millions, whatever we're talking about today. First thing we need to talk about, one of our guys did some on the road reporting. That's called being a dad. He took the kid to one of the kid or both the kids. I don't know.
Just one.
Hey, welcome back. How was New York?
It was great. I hadn't been in like 12 years. It's one of my favorite places to visit. I like it. And hadn't been in a long time. It was fun taking our 10-year-old on her first time seeing it. So we did all the touristy stuff. I had never been to the Statue of Liberty, for example, and went this time. So
very cool. So Matt is going to be joining us in a minute. He had some snags, so we'll see him soon enough. I've got my parents in, so that's why I'm kind of rushed today. Mom was a guest on Psycho and the Psychic yesterday, so that was fun. Everybody, if you didn't know it already, you learned my nickname is Rusty growing up as a kid. And So that got out, and everybody's calling me that now. Today, let me find the right intro. Here we go. Ohio primary. As soon as Matt gets in, we're going to talk about that. And the biggest question I've got, apparently, was it Chuck Schumer who took out some advertisements supporting Moreno?
Yep.
The mega the Mega Millions, the MAGA guy.
Yeah.
That was I guess the whole thing is they feel he is their easiest target, and that's who won. So we'll get Matt to talk about that. Trump, we can't go a week without talking about Trump, and this time it's the Trump bond, James Bond joke there that's due on Monday. I think it is Monday, and everybody's saying you're fired. they're not supporting him. Finally, and then we're also going to talk about, really, is the fraud case in New York really the one that we should all be concentrating on? And I think you've talked about that before. You didn't really like that one as much as some of the others, and I kind of sort of agree. A lot
It
of
got
people,
delayed this week.
but a
The
lot of people
criminal
have
trial
also
got
said,
delayed this week.
yeah,
So
yeah, but a lot of people have also said, if you're going to go after him for that, you're going to go after every other New York City developer who have done the same thing.
and that's the civil one. Yeah. So the civil one happened. There's the criminal one too. I think both of them are the weakest. I think they're both the weakest cases against Trump, and not just weak. Like, I think that both of them are things that they would never prosecute anyone else for, and that, it just, like, I don't like when we take these extra steps to go to political sort of prosecution, because I mean that is what this is. I mean, and this, I'm not a defender of Trump. But I don't think that what he did in the civil trial, when they can't find a victim,
Yeah, I'll
is.
address that in a second.
And we'll address that, yeah, for sure. But I mean, we might disagree on that. I think that they would never go after anyone else for this, and I worry about what the future. So what's someone in a red state going to do? Like, what are they going to find that's some obscure law that Joe Biden? You know what I mean? I just think this turns into a tit for tat thing, and I worry
Right,
about the judicial system turning into the circus that Congress has.
right. Well, yeah, but isn't it already?
I don't think I don't feel like the court system
We've
is
got Eileen
necessarily.
Cannon doing all kinds of favors down in the Southeast. We've got Clarence Thomas, whose wife is an insurrectionist.
I wouldn't go that far.
Read
I
the
wouldn't go
text
that far.
messages.
I think we're
Also,
using I think we use that word too liberally, and then it ends up meaning nothing. I think that when we call her an insurrectionist, it's conflating her with the people that actually stormed the Capitol with zip ties and wanting to hang Mike Pence, and I think that's I
so
think we need to
but at
reserve the
least
word.
you'll go as far as to say that the people on January 6th, the so-called hostages.
Yeah, I'm not calling them
Yeah.
hostages.
Okay.
So that's ridiculous. Again, this language matters, and I think that
Yeah.
calling
No,
them
agreed there.
hostages is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I also think calling a lot of them insurrectionists is even wrong, because I think most of the people that were at the Capitol were not necessarily. I think if you break into the Capitol, try to hang Mike Pence, and you've got zip ties, you're an insurrectionist. Like, I don't have a problem labeling
Yeah.
those
Right.
specific people. I think there are some people that don't qualify for that, but I think we got to be more careful and not broadly brush with these words. I don't think I'm in the popular opinion though necessarily, but I mean, it's just one of those weird things that I'm worried that what you end up doing is, which I think the media's been doing this with Trump the whole time, is like they they sometimes go too hard after something that's not legitimate, and then it delegitimizes everything they say about him that is legitimate. And it's kind of like that too. It's like, if we call her an insurrectionist, it kind of muddies down the word a little bit, waters it down to where
Oh,
it doesn't
I
mean
hear a
anything. You
beep.
know what I mean?
I hear a beep. There he is.
Here
Hey,
I am.
Hey, man. What's up?
What's up, y'all?
So we're just still kind of in the intro. We're dragging on a little bit, but one of the things that we definitely want to talk to you and give you the floor on first is an update on Ohio, for obvious reasons. In that That's your home state and home turf, but also another big election that happened there, Bernie Moreno. And by the way, if you just type in Bernie M on your way to typing in Bernie Moreno in Google, you still get Bernie Madoff first.
That makes sense.
So
I
even though
get,
he's
I get,
dead
I
and
get
gone-
Bernie Mac,
Oh, do you really? Okay.
Oh, rest in peace, right?
right?
Yeah, another one. So we gotta build up Bernie Moreno a little bit here, get him higher up. Speaking of higher up, Matt, he won, and wasn't he the guy that was kind of supported by the Dems and some of the was it Schumer that took out some ads on his behalf
Yeah.
that cut back on the others? Is that who the Dems want to go against?
Well, apparently that's who the Dems want to go against. Me personally, I think it's a weird strategy. I think they tried the strategy with JD Vance last time, and JD Vance versus Tim Ryan in the general election, and it didn't work out well. It didn't work out well, and
Yeah.
so I don't know why they continue to do this, because they think like a extreme MAGA person is going to be easier to beat. But what we always see is that Republicans are going to vote together, no matter if it's a moderate or a MAGA person. They're not going to vote for the Democrat, or they're just not going to vote. And so I don't know if I agree with the strategy, but that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
I don't
And-
like the strategy from a moral standpoint, because I think it's wrong to claim that these are the most dangerous people to our democracy and then to back them with money because they're easier to beat in November. Because like, what if it doesn't work out? Now in 2022, it did on everything but JD Vance. Like all the other kooks that they backed did end up winning their primaries and then lost in the general. So I think they think it worked. I think that would have happened regardless of them spending money. It just makes them look like hypocrites, in my opinion. And I think it's dangerous to flirt with. I mean, I don't think Bernie Moreno is quite the character that some of them were in 2022. I still think he's too Trumpy for me, but I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to be able to say, oh, these are this is a super dangerous group of people that are going to end democracy, but we think it'd be easier to beat them, so we're going to fund them. I just think it's really gross.
I 1000% agree. I mean, that is not. It's really playing with the American democracy, American people, and then we say how pure our democracy is, how much we want to uphold democracy, and then we just say, hey, by the way, let's play some games here.
Right?
And it is
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I just think it's cocky, and not a good kind of cocky.
Yeah, and it might cost them. I mean, I do think that they're right about the polls. I mean, of course, I don't know how accurate polls are this far out from a general election in
I'm
a
about
state
to
senate.
prove polls wrong.
Yeah, but it did show that he was the easier candidate to beat in November for sure. The polls show that. The other guy would have ran away with it handily. I think that probably either one of the Republicans are going to win that Senate seat in Ohio, just looking at the polls and stuff, but Moreno has less of a chance, and so that's their idea. And obviously they're trying to flip the Senate. So
I want to just wait. I have to push back on that really quick, because the polls were saying that Bernie Moreno and Matt Dolan were neck and neck, and Bernie Moreno got over 50% of the vote, more than both of the other candidates combined. And so again, the polls are complete bullshit at this point. And
but does Ohio have closed primaries? Like Republicans can only vote in Republicans and Democrats?
No, you can pull different ballots, and that makes you the Republican or a Democrat.
But you can't vote in both.
You can't vote in both. You can one or the other, obviously.
Yeah, but if I'm a Democrat, I can pull a Republican ballot and vote Republican.
So my thought that
Hold on.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what happened?
Do I think that's what happened?
Do you think a bunch of Democratic Party members said,
not
hey,
significant.
I see
Not
this advertisement. Okay.
No.
Not to the extent of getting the 50% plus that he got.
No, you're not going to get tens of thousands of Democrats to get a pull Republican ballot and then be classified as a Republican for the next 2 years. That's not happening. It's not happening. Yes,
so
some people
you
probably
have to switch parties.
By pulling a ballot into the primary, you switch your affiliation.
Oh.
So then that's what makes you a registered Republican or registered Democrat. And so I think there were probably some people that are gaming, but not a substantial enough amount to show the numbers that is like, oh, we're gaming the whole system.
Yeah.
Did Blake? Oh no, I thought Blake froze there for a minute.
No,
He was just so still.
I was just reading something. So I think the polls I'm talking about though is like the general election polls showed that. What's the other guy's name? I just forgot his name. Sorry,
Matt Dolan.
Yeah, would have fared better in the general election. So my theory is that
I don't agree.
is that I think independents are getting a bigger swing, becoming a bigger swing in every election that goes forward as
There's
more
more of
people.
them. There's
Yeah.
more of them. Generation Z, that more Generation Z voters are registering independent than with either party combined.
And so I think that was the polling that Democrats were using to justify funding Marino, is what I'm saying. Is like
Yeah.
they thought that general election polls were showing that he'd be easier to beat.
Right, and I understand what you're saying there, but what I'm saying is the polls or the polling is wrong because they already came in with the polling and said that they were neck
Right.
and neck, and they weren't even
Right.
close to being neck and neck.
Right.
And they said the same thing with JD Vance, and they're like, "Oh, with JD Vance is going to be easier to beat than again Matt Dolan ran that time, or Josh Mandel was on the stage. It's like JD Vance would be easier to beat, and he handily walked away with it." I just don't believe that, and I think that we're getting bamboozled by this stupid insider kind of baseball strategy playing that is trying to confuse the populace. No, go vote for your interests. Go to the polls, vote for your interests.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I do think primary polling is pretty bad a lot of times, like in the actual, because you're trying to predict how such a small percentage of the population is going to go. So I generally trust general election polling more than I trust primary election polling, just because we've seen that it's been wrong even at the top of the ticket, like between Trump and Haley before she dropped out. It was like it
Right.
wasn't exactly lining up. And because in those states where independents can vote either way, especially the ones that don't have to re-register, she was getting support. Now, and interesting there is that in places like Ohio, she got like 20%, and or South
Right.
Carolina and stuff, or North
Like
Carolina.
you said before, you don't like primaries or caucuses at all. My biggest thing with either of them, I don't like caucuses because I think they're outdated. They're the ones that are especially outdated. But what I think needs to happen to make every state much more relevant is to have, whether it's going to be a primary or caucus, have it all on the same day. Because so many people have complained to me, like I've got a coworker here at Yerg's Radio who's in Atlanta, one of our stations, WDJY. And he said, by the time it gets to me, why do I go? The
Yeah,
decision's made.
Yeah,
Yeah,
very good
and
point.
Why are they not all on the same day, just like the federal election is?
so
Agreed.
that people can travel around the country campaigning. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Isn't
that what the time between the primary and caucus and the final election is for?
Yeah, I mean that's kind of like, come on, Blake. That's saying well, then we should have different days for the general election. Come on.
No, but it's not,
Exactly.
because at least like the general election has such a lead up to it, but the primary, of course, the primary season's gotten longer. I mean, now I wish it wasn't as long as it is now,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think that
I
would
think
be, yeah.
what I saw as far as dates go is that, and maybe he's not so bad as Trump, but George W. had apparently divided the country so hard that Hillary Clinton began running in 2007, not in 2008.
No,
Or
she would
not
start running in
late.
2006, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was even earlier.
Exactly. And everybody's followed suit ever since. Like
Yeah.
Matt just said, the primary season has gotten longer. It didn't get longer. It never stopped.
We were talking about 2024 on like in March of
2020.
2021. I mean, it was
Absolutely.
immediate. I think that the cycle is wearing people out. I think most people don't pay attention this early. I think it's mostly people like us and kind of political junkies. And I think I'm with you, Jurgs, on that. I wish that there was a way for the polls not to wag the voters, which I think is
Right.
happening way too much. It's one thing for internal campaigns to use polling to figure out like where are they resonating with voters, where they're not resonating, what they need to talk about. Like that's the thing we should be using it for. What I don't like is when people are like, oh, well, the polls say this, and therefore I'm just going to stay home because there's no point in me voting. Or they say, or the opposite, my guy's going to win, so I can stay home. Like I think it just has all sorts of distortions down line.
And I've been saying that. And in fact, there's another. I'm just going to touch on it. Maybe we'll come back to it next week because there's something else I want to give Matt a lot of showtime for. But it just came out that Biden, what was like 58 million just in February.
Right. I think he
last
doubled.
year in the fourth quarter. Trump didn't do that in the quarter.
Yeah, I don't pay a lot of attention to fundraising because I don't think money means everything. I think that we've
Right.
seen that
Correct.
Hillary Clinton had
Correct.
more money.
Right.
You
Absolutely.
know,
And that number, that 58 million or wherever it was now, was probably you and me contributing, political action committees contributing, super PACs contributing, corporations, all that.
Yeah.
But if we talked about this, I think 2 weeks ago, and Matt gave us that one link, look at what the people are doing. And Biden is still leading way more than any poll is going to suggest. We'll come back to that because we got another primary to talk about. Ohio. We just did kind of sort of talk about it in Moreno, but somebody else pretty big won in Ohio.
This guy
Matt.
right here.
That was? That's right.
congrats.
Our very own Matt
Hey.
Deemer is the
Hey, thanks.
Democratic nominee for Congress. What is your actual? I've been missing this. I know you're Cleveland, right? Because you've got the Cleveland hat on every week. But what is the what's the actual district you're in?
Yeah, we're Ohio 7th. We're outside of Cleveland. So I have none of Cleveland, but we're the suburbs outside of Cleveland. So half of Cuyahoga County. Cleveland is in Cuyahoga County, but we're half of Cuyahoga County. And then we also have Medina and Wayne counties. So, but yeah,
Okay.
we're a hop, skip, and a jump away from Cleveland. We won 82% of the vote. So it was a nail biter over here.
Yeah, that sounds like a real.
Yeah,
Wow.
we're edge of our seat. The race got called, I think, 30 minutes after the polls closed. So
Wow.
That's a fun
awesome.
election party.
yeah, well, no, I'm not an election party kind of guy, but I was just sitting there watching, and I was like, oh, well, now I have to figure out what show I'm going to watch now for the rest of the evening. I thought I was going to be up here watching votes come in, but didn't happen. Race got called, and I turned on. I think I'm watching Shogun now on Hulu. Great show, by the way, guys.
I haven't even heard of that. I don't think.
Shogun. Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so there's two shows that you guys both have to watch. I think
Okay.
some of the best TV that has been made in the past year or so. Number one is an animated series called Blue-Eyed Samurai.
Okay.
Absolutely excellent. It's about all about Japan when they were a closed nation, as you know, and then the Portuguese, the British, and everybody started to come into Japan slowly, and everything got messed up. Anyway, Blue Eye Samurai, excellent, and then Shogun is kind of like this is the same era, but it's a live action. Excellent TV. Go.
You lived in Japan or China?
China.
Okay.
All right, I'll check them out.
All right. Then moving on to our other boy. Matt's our boy right now first, but DJT, and the New York civil and criminal fraud cases. I think it was Blake typed into our show notes as the week progressed. Is this a really fair case? It's clearly, in his mind at least, if it was you that typed it.
It was me.
And I think, there's a certain degree at minimum of political targeting and the weaponization that we've everybody's been talking about, that apparently the Department of Justice is supposedly doing against Trump, and anybody who doesn't like Trump is weaponizing something against Trump.
Right.
But you think that if there ever was a case for that argument, it would be New York.
I think it's both the New York cases. I think the criminal one is really weak, and so is the fraud one, because there's not really a victim in either one of them. And even so in the fraud one, to catch people up to the boring details, is the New York State is basically saying he was overvaluing his assets when he was going to get loans. But those banks are doing, they testified, they do their own internal investigations and stuff like that, and they determine if the banks want to do business with a shady businessman like Donald Trump, then that's their prerogative. I wouldn't suggest doing so, but I just think that going after someone for $450 million in a civil trial, when there's no victim that they can present, is, I think, a dangerous precedent with a really loose, like the target of it. The law is very broad, and so they can. What my concern is that in the future we're going to have people on the right do the same thing now, and what I don't like is that it's turning into, no one else would ever be brought to civil trial for this if their name was not Donald J. Trump in New York. And I think that's what bothers me about it. It doesn't bother me that if Trump, if this all goes down, this is how Trump goes broke.
To a nicer guy.
I'm not gonna shed tears for Donald Trump, but it does bother me in the sense of like, well, what will be the future of this? Is this really the last time they're ever going to do it? Because if it works, I don't think it will be. I think that we've seen, look at the precedent of like before Donald Trump and how every Republican that ran for president was called a Nazi or racist or whatever. I mean, like the things they said about Mitt Romney are pretty laughable now.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that lead up made everything they said about Donald Trump seem like it didn't stick, because they were like, yeah, we've heard this before. You called Bush a Nazi, you called Reagan a Nazi, you called McCain a Nazi, you called all these people racist and terrible things. And now that it's true, maybe we're not going to believe you. And so I think the same thing can happen here with this kind of like civil trial. Is like, well, what's going to prevent them from doing this to just anyone who runs for anything if they can find one statute that they potentially do? And like I said, the criminal trial is similar in the sense that they're trying to take a misdemeanor and turn it into a felony. I just think that it's gross. Like I said, I'm not shedding tears for Donald Trump. I think he's done
Yeah.
enough shady things in business that something was liable to get caught up to him at some point. But I don't think this is it. I don't think there's a there, and it bothers me that
So
I'm scared about what happens next.
Speaking of there, I couldn't disagree with you more there. Every crime has a victim.
Well, who's the victim here?
You might not be able to put a name and address on it, but a 23-year veteran fraud investigator can.
But who is the victim, though?
Banks.
But the banks
customers of the
testified that they're
banks.
not.
Yeah, no, because they got a tie to him. Any other actual criminal or civil fraud investigator that is actually impartial is going to tell you, because that's what we call them in reports, victim banks. They paid out, and as a result, you and each and every one of their other customers paid out.
But they got paid back.
That doesn't matter.
How does it not matter? There's no victim.
What happens? Okay, so what happens when that inflation of the rate or that devaluation of the property causes a loss of money, and they can't get paid back?
Yeah, but this is you.
But that's why the law is there. That's why the law is there.
But what about, okay, we're talking about banks. So this is what banks do. Banks make investments. They give loans to people.
We're not talking about banks. We're talking about crimes that are supposedly, quote unquote, victimless. So it can be with regards to valuing a property or devaluing a property for purposes of increasing or decreasing the valuation and the tax rate or the interest rate or an amount that you can loan against it, or the value of the property tax that you're going to eventually pay. If you have $1 million house and you get it valued at $250,000, you don't pay as much taxes. But that entity, wherever you're living, still needs to raise, still needs to raise the additional $750,000 they just lost out on.
But they didn't claim the state was the prosecutors did not claim the state was the victim either. The state can be the victim for sure. They did not claim that. They had no victim presented in the trial. And that's what bothers me, is that you're saying the bank can be the victim or the taxpayers can be the victim, but there's no, like, find me a fraud case where there's not a victim stated in the prosecution. And I mean, I'm not a lawyer, but that seems like a really necessary thing in a fraud case, is for there to be a victim. The state needs to be the victim. The bank could be the victim, but the bank's claiming they weren't the victim. They're like, we did our own investigation. We got paid back. We made money. What's the problem? And
okay,
that's my problem.
Stop with that last part. That is irrelevant. If I smack you,
that's different. That's assault.
And cause your nose to bleed.
Mm-hmm.
But I put a Band-Aid on it and put cotton up your nose. I smacked you, but I fixed it.
But that's not the same thing as this.
Yes, it is. I committed a crime, but I fixed it immediately. I'm still responsible for the crime that I committed. Anyway, that's not one of this week's points.
Wait, I want to weigh in on this one really quick, because I have to disagree with yours with this one, and surprisingly, actually, but I think I sent you the link about this guy. He's a YouTuber. His name is Louis Rossman. And Louis Rossman is a person who basically has a YouTube channel about consumer protection and so on and so forth. And he actually made a video on this situation. And he is a businessman in New York, and he was made a whole 50 videos about shopping for commercial real estate in New York City, and he went in there because he would get baited into these different ads that says 2,000 square foot of commercial real estate. He'll go in there with a laser, measuring tape and see how much square footage he's actually getting for the rent that they're asking for. And every one of the places lied to him. Everyone. He said that that's commercial real estate in New York. He's like 2,000. No, it's actually 1,200. It was 3,000. It was actually 800. Some of them were just egregious.
It was like half. Yeah, it was crazy.
Did you watch that video?
Yeah, I did, and it was really interesting because like the realtors would, when confronted with it, would be like, "Yeah, that's just New York real estate," and just like as if that was just normal.
And even the closest one was like 200 square feet off. The fact of the matter is it seems like this is a common practice in New York City of exaggerating your real estate holdings and trying to get people to either rent it, buy it, or do something with it without any kind of factual information behind it. So when this happens to Trump, yes, okay, here's the facts. If I was somebody with real estate, if it was the bank, if it was a underwriter, if it was a customer or someone who's going to rent it, I want the actual facts of what is it it's worth, the square footage, and so on and so forth. If this is not standard practice and you have these are crimes being committed, and this is fraud over and over and over and over again, does this actually set precedent and for New York City? That's my question. So if this doesn't set precedent, then this does not have anything to do with anything that is legal. This is just a witch hunt for Donald Trump.
Yeah, because are they going to start going after all those other real estate people? Probably not.
Exactly.
Right?
If this does set precedent, then this is absolutely a viable case. And so you mentioned something like if I smack you and I go call the cops, that has precedent because if you can't hit somebody, that's assault. You go to jail because that's precedent. You don't just start letting people get off like, oh, I hit the person. Now you get to get off with it. No, it doesn't even matter if the other person says it's okay. He hit me. Sometimes the cops can press charges. Like, no, that's assault. You're going to jail. It doesn't matter what I say.
Right.
And that's when you said, oh, the bank testified for him. Doesn't fucking matter what they say because they're part of the fraud. So,
but they're not part of the fraud if they're loaning money based on those assets.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It absolutely doesn't matter if they're part of the fraud or not. If you go in and kill somebody in their family, and the family's like, it's fine. If you kill the person, it's still murder.
No. Hold on. But there's a difference there.
There isn't a difference. But I want to tell Matt that he actually agrees with me. He was kind of sort of disagreeing, but he actually agrees with me. During my career in the Secret Service, we found plenty of times where it was the banks committing fraud.
Exactly.
Okay, we couldn't go after them. Do you know why? Because they were our criminal partners, our investigative partners in too many other cases. We couldn't burn that bridge.
You're right. I think there's a really important distinction, though, we have to say, because we keep conflating the two terms. This is not a criminal trial. They are not saying there was a crime. They're saying it was a civil trial. So I think it's really important to note the differences because there's different matters of facts. There's different matters of what does the jury have to find. Like there's all these different
civil trial levels of standards.
There's totally different levels of standards. So this is not criminal. It was not a criminal trial. And you both keep substituting the word criminal. There was a crime. This is not a criminal trial. It's a civil trial. And I think that if you're civilly trying someone for fraud, you have to present that someone was victimized. And I just don't think that happened here. And I think Matt's right. If this was, I don't think there's a situation where civil trials have been used as precedent before. I don't think that's really a thing as much because they're civil. But if this was a precedent and they said, look, this business practice is stopping in New York, fine, then maybe they're taking a stand. That's not what's going to happen, though. They're not going to do this to anyone else, even though they're all doing the exact same thing. And keep in mind, this is just him getting a loan based on the assets that he can use as collateral on it. And the bank said the bank can do that with no collateral if they want to. That's the bank's decision. Right. So if the bank would have said,
not doing without collateral, and that's given that 400 million.
That's a foolish banking move. But this is why there's nothing criminal about it.
But this is why I'm agreeing and disagreeing with both of you. I guess this is what's happening is that there's collusion within this. So if I'm Donald Trump, I have my person that goes in there that assesses my real estate, that it works for the bank. We have the person that inflates it. They know that it's inflated. The bank then underwrites it. And then you have this whole kind of like money laundering, wish-washy bullshit in the back end. That's exactly what's happening. Fine. There's no victim. Everybody's just part of this, this whole scheme. But the fact of the matter is, what I'm trying to say, fine, there's no victim. Let's just say there's no fucking victim. That's absolutely fine. But let's just use this as precedent. if there is no precedent set, that's what I'm trying to say, then this is all BS. You have to set precedent. Is this legal or
Right.
not legal? And so if you're not going to be doing that with precedent, you're just going after one person because of this, then we have an issue. That's what I'm trying
Well,
to say.
and you might be onto something there because and you said the same thing, Blake. Quick story, then we got to take a break. Back in 2020, when Biden was declared the victor, the NYPD immediately began tearing down the barricades that surrounded Trump Tower in New York. The Secret Service agent went up to the lieutenant or captain or whoever was leading the tear down and said, "Wait, guys, President Trump is still president." The exact words of that, I think it was a captain, looked at the agent and said, "Not here, he's not." And they started ripping. That's how much they love Donald Trump in New York City. They basically already told him, "Don't come back."
Yeah, that's fine, but like that to me proves that this is only about him. You know what I mean? And I don't like
There's that
Trump at all.
level to which I agree.
Yeah, and I just think that this is going to set a danger. I think the precedent that's really getting set here is that it's okay to go after your political enemies for things that for any reason, and to find obscure ways to prosecute them for things or to hold them civilly liable for things. And I don't believe for a second the right won't do this, that some red state won't go after like Hunter Biden or Joe Biden or something like that for the same kind of thing. And I think it'll be as ridiculous, but you'll have to go like, yeah, look who started it though. It's like I think it's a bad path to go down, and that's what bothers me is that I think that
No,
this
I
will
agree.
not be the last one.
I agree, especially when all the other legitimate cases
Yeah.
that are floating around out there
And
are also being accused of weaponization.
Well,
Yeah,
before we go
Yeah.
to commercial really quick, I want to put out something for everybody to think about when we come back. I want to talk about it. What is happening between the banks and maybe the underwriter of these loans with Donald Trump is the same thing with any kind of, and you said there's no victims of the crime, but it's just the same thing with any kind of money laundering, for example. So, for example, you have a piece of art, you overvalue the piece of art, you sell it to somebody else, they have that piece of art, it goes cross borders, or maybe a valuable watch, and you could transfer that value back and forth. This is a crime because of what it's doing. It's overvaluing and taking money and washing it back and forth. Now,
Right.
you can say there's no victim. However, there are things on the books that says, hey, if I buy a $10 million painting and it's actually drawn by a 5-year-old in China, bring it over here and sell it for $10 million, there's something fishy going on. That's not allowed. This is the same thing. So if there's precedent, there's no precedent.
Yep. Oh, he just froze on us.
Matt froze, but perfect time to go to commercial then.
Yeah, we'll do that, and we'll be back right after this. WDJY, WWPR, Yerg's Radio. This might not be all that long. I'm not sure if this is the right list of commercials, so we might be back in a little sooner than that. See you in a minute. Does your house smell nasty? Do you want to freshen it up a little bit? Go to aromabypeter.com. Check out all of Peter's candles. It's what we burn here in Studio Yerg's. I'm burning right now leather scented candle. That's right, leather scented. So go to aromabypeter.com/Yerg's and check out his candles today.
I'm Jane Stahl, retired English teacher, and with my BFF, Susan Bebeck, we manage Studio B Fine Art Gallery in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. We showcase the art of hundreds of local artists, publish books of the poetry, prose, and art of local writers, offer classes, art parties, workshops, discussion groups, cater dinners. We've even hosted a wedding. And we're here to be the go-to place for friendship, learning, and fun in our community. Virtual tours of our exhibits are available right here on Yerg's Radio. Let us introduce you to some amazing art and artists.
Check out Jane Stahl and everyone at Studio B in Boyertown, Pennsylvania. Please visit our YouTube channel, Talk TV 24. How's your website doing? I'll tell you how mine's doing. It's awesome. Yergs.com is got to be the best website for anybody in podcasting or any sort of broadcast solo journalist like me. How did I get that? Limit Break Digital. Limit Break Digital did my website with Yergs.com. They did YergerGroup.com. They take care of my marketing, my branding, and help me get the message out to you. Go to limitbreakdigital.com/Yergs for 10% off your next project. That's a $3,000 site, Yergs.com. And you can get 10% off that by just going to limitbreakdigital.com/Yergs today. Talk to Jay. That's my guy. We all got a guy, and Jay's mine. limitbreakdigital.com. Hey, gang, it's Yergs. Right now, our country is about to embark on yet another controversial presidential election. I have an actual question, legitimate question, as a political scientist and historian by education. If you are a Trump supporter, I want to hear from you. I want to know what your appeal to Donald Trump is at this time. Please email me news, N-E-W-Z, at yergs.com. News, N-E-W-Z, at yergz.com. Thanks. Participants must be willing to provide their contact information, answer a series of questions, and then have their first name broadcast over the radio and social media relevant to Up the Middle. Hey, we're back. I think.
Yeah.
You guys hear me? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that was I wasn't sure. I saw that said 3 minutes, but there was only one of the commercial advertiser logos over top of the thumbnail. I'm like, oh God, what did I put on here? Because some of the times, if I screw up, I'll leave it on and I'll play with it and do outtakes and whatever. But so while we were at the break, we did the private chat thing and decided we're going to do some wrapping up on the Trump civil versus criminal New York thing. Matt, you cast that first vote, so go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to tell you a quick little story about living in China and why we had why everybody in China had expensive watches. It's pretty common. Everybody knows this. You always had expensive watches because if you wanted to leave the country really quick, you had some sort of value that is on your person that you could just hop on a plane and take it with you. It's a $10,000-$20,000 Rolex, a $50,000 Hublot, or a Richard Mille or something. You had these things that you can get out of the country really quick. We all knew that these things are pretty much inflated in value. Like Rolexes, do they really cost what they really cost? You get really great watches with the same build quality for a fraction of the price. And so this is something that we have to figure out, what was happening on the back end when it came to the real estate, when it came to Trump, when it came to the banks. What were they doing with all of this? Because I think that if you dug a little bit deeper, there was a reason why they were going to pay more for the value of Trump's property or give him a loan on that, because that went to somewhere else, and how they used that money and how that money circulated through the system. And so, again, don't know if there's a victim or not a victim. What I'm trying to say is, does it set precedent? And if so, there are different ways that the banks could be gaming the system, the underwriters gaming the system, and Trump, that might not be as savory as everybody thinks. That it's not just, I'm taking a loan to build more property. It's more like, what's really happening?
Right.
Yeah, and that's fine, but they didn't prove any of that stuff at this trial, and they didn't even bring most of that stuff up. So I think that's my problem with it. But I mean,
Agreed.
I don't like these practice. I think that the fact that the whole state of New York is in Manhattan is just to be like, yeah, this is how real estate works in New York. I'm like, that seems like you're ripping everyone off. You're ripping every little small business owner off. Yeah, it would be great if this was a campaign to change that system, but it's not. And I think what bothers me the most about it, like I said, is just that it waters down the other more serious charges. And I think when people are going to, I think the problem is most voters are not paying attention to the level that we are, and they're going to go, well, this one seems kind of weird, and so does this one, and then they're going to ignore the ones that are actually more serious. And I think that's the problem.
Yeah. All right. Up next, you've known about this since the past 4 years, even longer. EVs are the thing of the future. Electronic vehicles or electric vehicles. Or are they? My dad's got me convinced, and believe me, you think I'm not a tech guy. You should see Yogi. He is not a tech guy. But he's got me convinced, and he is a car guy, that hydrogen is going to be how we're going to be powering a lot of different things. But the Biden administration was critiqued on the fact that some of their goals for electric vehicles were a bit aggressive. They've toned it down some. What is the wave of the future? And during the break, yeah, get back to your mic because I'm going to call on you again. During the break, Matt, you said you're huge on EVs. Uh, EVs versus combustion versus, and this is a very last minute add to today's show, so we'll have to really research it and come back again next week. But also versus the hydrogen vehicles that are being played with. Go ahead.
First of all, hydrogen is a cool idea. I know a lot of engines can be just simply converted into hydrogen. It's clean. It's plentiful. The hydrogen is, but I also think that is the middleman again that is going to. That is the reason why they're purposely killing EVs. My conspiracy theory, here's my tinfoil hat. Yep. Tesla made a great EV vehicle. It's actually cheaply made. It actually sucks, but it's fast. It inspired people to getting excited about EVs, and then everybody else made shit after that. Shit infrastructure, shit charging, shit vehicles, crappy, everything. Just the style sucked. I personally think that they all killed the EV, and if everybody's not excited about the EV, is because of all the other companies were coming in there trying to do it, and they just didn't care. I think they purposely killed the EV company. The reason why they killed the EVs is not because of electricity or infrastructure or green, because most people that bought EVs was in like, oh, I'm going to buy this to be green. We bought them because they're fast and they're cool and they're tech heavy. They're great cars, or we thought they were. It's because we could charge them with solar. We could charge them with with different way. We literally, as a consumer, can put solar panels on our roof and not have to touch anything. But it's still the barrier to entry for anything, hydrogen, gas, whatever. There's going to have to be somebody that gets that hydrogen, puts it in a pump, and does all that infrastructure for that. That's big money, and they're not going to let us get away with just putting solar panels on our roof. And that's why I think they purposely killed the EV, or killing it.
I was going to say, I heard you say killed, and I know during the break you said you're a huge EV guy, so you might be.
But I'm a huge fan of electric cars, but I'm also a huge fan of sovereignty. I'm also a huge fan of why do I have to be attached to the grid? Why can't I charge my car with my? And some people in some places, in some cities, and some communities, they actually tax you for being able to bypass their grid and their system. And so I just feel like this is a whole thing of. There's no reason that they just are doing this to EVs, and like there's a whole infrastructure. Like who owns like Electrify America, the other biggest charging infrastructure outside of Tesla, Electrify America. Who owns them?
Volkswagen, probably gas company.
Yeah. Okay. Volkswagen owns them, and Volkswagen had to do this. And from what I heard, is concessions because of their whole scandal, because they were fudging the numbers on their of their diesel stuff. And so part of that was like, hey, was start, getting in there to say you're green and blah, blah, blah. So and that charging network sucks. It absolutely sucks. Their cars suck. It suck to charge. Their range. It's just absolutely a disaster. And you can see how they even build their EVs. Their EVs are built on these existing platforms. I mean, look at anything that's made from Volkswagen or Ford or whatever. It's a Ford F-150 Lightning is a Ford F-150.
And if they say, we're problems with them too.
Tons of problems. And you know what's going to happen? If they say we're going to kill the F-150, they still have the F-150 right there. They're going to stop making this in the body of the frame. There you go. We're going to do it's like they have this. So I don't feel that everybody is actually putting and now you're creating this huge narrative of EVs have the problems, the range, the yada yada, the infrastructure sucks, yada. I think it's just an effort to say this will not work, and now we're going to go to try to find something else. That's my conspiracy theory. You guys can fight me on that.
I think there's more ineptitude involved than there is like purposely trying to do it. I think they saw Tesla take a part of the market that they were like, oh, we should try to get that market too. And like Rivian would be another car company that I feel like is trying to like make a cool car, as opposed to like, now they've had a lot of financial problems too. I think the problem is that it's.
I was going to say, are some of these companies going to be the next DeLorean?
Yes, I do think. I mean, without a doubt, some of them will be. I think that. But like Ford's not going to be. I mean, like Ford's going to be Ford. But what I think this is going to lead to, specifically because like, okay, so the Biden administration wanted 67% of vehicle sales in 2030 to be electric vehicles. That number was asinine. That's
no. I'll show you asinine.
Yeah.
I think it was by 2030. California wanted 100% EV and 0 gas operated weed whackers.
Right. I think it was a little later than 2030 on that, but it was crazier. You're absolutely right. I can't remember the exact numbers, but you're right. California's goal was crazier. And a lot of these car companies, the part like Matt, you're not totally wrong because but I think I blame California for it. California said you can't sell cars here if you don't have an all electric vehicle. And so all the car companies had to scrap together some crappy electric vehicle that they could put a
There you
sticker
go.
on and sell in California so they could sell other cars. And you're right, that led to the perception of electric vehicles being crappy, which is, I think, unfair for the most part, except that all those California ones were crappy. You couldn't even buy them for the most part. They weren't really manufacturing them. But so I blame California's law for that because they're the ones that forced the car companies to make a crappy electric car or they couldn't sell their other cars in California. So this all goes back to, I think, what I don't like is I don't like the state trying to push consumers in a direction they're not ready to go yet. And right now, the direction that consumers are wanting to go is obviously hybrids because
Right.
EV sales not decreased. The rate of increase decreased. Sorry, that's a weird way to say it. But 2023
They
saw
need a
fewer.
backup.
Yeah, saw fewer than the previous years as far as lead up. But they saw a huge increase in hybrid sales. So consumers are clearly concerned about a few things. They're concerned about the charging stations. They're like, will there be a place to plug my car in? They're concerned about range and they're concerned about like in certain places like rural areas, they're like, maybe I don't have either one of those. I need range, or like cold weather affects batteries a lot worse than warm weather. And so
Right.
there's legitimate consumer concerns about the way EVs function right this moment. Obviously, the technology is going to change and they're going to improve and they're already pretty cool. But like you can't just wipe away those concerns. And most people that are buying EVs right now, statistically, are not getting rid of gas powered vehicles. They're just supplementing their vehicles
Right.
with, because for the most part,
It's one of
it's
each.
it's rich people getting a $7,000 tax break on a car is what it is. They'd be buying an EV probably either way. I don't think we should be subsidizing rich people buying EVs. I think that we should just let them buy EVs if they want to buy an EV, but that should be it. And so I think all of this turns into, so Biden, so they rolled back from 67% to, they now want it to be 31 to 44% of sales. And it all depends on how they're doing this is they're saying, okay, here's your overall fleet of vehicles have to be at this certain miles per gallon thing. So you can make that a mix of hybrid, you can make that a mix of just traditional internal combustion engines, and some of them have to be totally electric to make up for the gas mileage of the other thing. And so that's why that
But
range is a weird
here's my
31 to
issue with the
44%.
EVs. Here's my issue with the EVs. Yes, they don't use gas. They don't use fossil fuels, but they do use fuel. Lithium is now next to impossible to come by. And secondly, they're not that cheap to make if you're going to make a good one.
Well, and they're very carbon intensive to make too. So that I think you bring
True.
up a good point. Are they even more friendly to the environment? If
Right.
all of this is about climate change, I did a whole podcast over this actually yesterday. So I did a ton of research this week for it. But there's a group of people I follow that do.
So, Matt, you're not going to be fighting me. You're going to be fighting Blake.
You can fight both of us, I guess.
Is it always fighting Blake? Man,
Yeah,
I
that's
really
fine.
like this guy too.
No, and here's the thing. So here's the trick with electric vehicles. So there's this. It's these guys that do natural resource investing. So their whole thing is they invest in things like oil and gas and gold and minerals and all these things. That's what their sort of stock portfolio and what they give advice on stuff. And they looked at it. They were like, first of all, we're comparing apples and oranges here. We're talking about miles per gallon, and you're talking about kilowatt hours. We've got to convert all this to one thing that we can measure together. And so they say there's like specifically two things with EVs that are problematic in the sense that you have to build that battery first, which is really carbon intensive because you got to do a lot
Right.
of mineral mining. You've got to build those batteries. We also have to talk about the China factor of the batteries too, and like talk about
There's
that.
something else about the mining too, though, that like Tesla almost made some flour almost extinct because they were so heavily mining whatever that was to
There are
make the battery.
there are certainly other environmental concerns other than just carbon output that we're talking about when we're talking about mining for the minerals. So I think it's worth talking about that stuff too. But really what they did is they took the energy, they talk about energy return on investment. You've got to put a certain amount of energy into something to get a certain amount of energy out of it. And by their math, they determined that if an electric vehicle built, all the stuff, the battery, the carbon that has to go into that, if you build that out and it's running on a grid that's powered by natural gas, and they did the math on just natural gas because it is the biggest thing powering our power grid. It's 40% of our power grid in America is powered by natural gas. They determined it was like 31 miles per kilowatt hour that you get from a over the life of a car, which is a little shorter for an electric vehicle because the battery lasts like 120,000 miles ish, and they determined it was like 31 miles per kilowatt hour for the electric vehicle and 40 for the internal combustion engine. So really, even the carbon output of the vehicle over the lifespan is less. Now, to Matt's point, if you have your own solar thing in your garage and you're powering your car with your own solar energy, that takes care of that part. For the rest of it, that's not everyone though, because that's like Matt mentioned, a complicated situation. Some utilities charge for that and they won't let you do that. And so what you have to do is you have to change the energy source that goes into plugging in the electric vehicles. So if by 2050 we want to get to an all electric vehicle future, if that's what we want, we have to increase the amount of power we can put into the grid, which is very unstable right now. And if you haven't noticed with the blackouts and brownouts throughout the country,
Right.
so we got to fix that system. And you have to run that on a source of energy that has a high return of investment. Solar and wind do not. They have like a 3.5 to 1 as far as what we all have to build right now. That will improve as time goes on. But nuclear is 100 to 1 on that energy input to output, or I guess output to input. If we converted more of our grid to nuclear, it would make EVs work, and it would make them work financially. It would also make them work carbon emission wise. But my fear is that Biden's doing two things that are wrong. He's put like two things in two different lanes, but they're going to converge and cause a problem. Is that if you try to get there's already 10 states that say we have to have 100% renewable energy by 2045 or 2050, and most of them don't include nuclear in that list, and which is weird to me, right? You cannot make that work if the grid is all solar and wind. We've got to stop treating solar and wind like they can save the planet. They don't
Right.
have the output
So
for it. You gotta have a better
issue with
mix.
the wind. What they're finding out with the wind right now is that with the wind farms that are out in the water are screwing up the humpback whales because they think it's something, and they're coming to these wind farms and mating seasons are screwed up. And the wind farms that are on land are screwing up land creatures because of the vibration of the towers. Matt had something that we'll wrap up and then figure out which one of us is going to play the Mega Millions and which one of us is going to play Powerball.
All right, so you said a lot of stuff there, Blake. So I want to just touch on a couple of things. Number one, you said rich people incentives for the tax credit. I want to just push back on that because it's for $150,000 or less for that tax credit. And I wouldn't say that anything less. They're not really rich. So I'll push back a little bit on that. So
but
if you're
buying a Tesla X that's $130,000,
it doesn't qualify.
I thought it did.
No, it doesn't. You have to for SUVs, it's $80,000 and less.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know.
And for cars, it's $55,000 and less. And then you have you have an upper limit of your salary that you will
It's that now though, but I don't think it was a few years ago.
It was always that. It was always that, because that goes to my second point about how the Biden administration rolled that out and how the IRS was actually against Tesla at the beginning. So remember, Biden invited GM Mary Barra to the White House and showed off and called her the leader of the EV industry, which was totally unfounded and absolutely ridiculous to anybody who ever bought and owns an EV. But with that, once the IRS had these new tax incentives come out, they left Tesla cars off the tax incentives. And a lot of them didn't qualify for the tax incentives at the beginning, which made everybody go, why are we allowing, all these other cars? For example, a Jeep Wrangler with a 5 kilowatt hour or 13 kilowatt hour battery was qualifying for the same tax incentives, even though it was a hybrid car, as a Tesla, which is fully electric. And they were leaving those off. And so Tesla actually had to go back to the IRS and fight to have their cars on there. So there was a stack up against Tesla. And I'm not a Tesla or Elon fanboy, but I will say that this is definitely unfair because of who was really leading the market.
Right.
A couple of things that we have here is you mentioned is the cost of batteries is a huge one for these cars. And I also want to say consumer protection. We talked about Louis Rossman before about consumer protection. One of the major reasons why I sold my Tesla, I bought a Tesla in 2021. I sold it in 2023 because one of the biggest reasons was, number one, like I said, the fit and finish of the Tesla was absolutely rubbish. And I was like, I can't believe I paid this much for this piece of crap. I'm going back to my 2011 Subaru Forester. But with the updates of these cars, and all of them have the same things, and actually something just came out the other day that I think everybody should know about, is that they can literally change the functionality of your car, right? With
Over the
software
air.
updates. Yeah,
Yeah.
over the air. So, I mean, if you were used to driving your car one way, you can wake up the next day and your car drives a totally different way, which is totally kind of crazy. Not only
Right.
that, is they're part of their business model is selling your data. GM was just somebody was just talking about GM the other day. Not just Tesla does this, but everybody does this. What they do is they have so many sensors. If it's a gyroscope, if it's a accelerometer, and so on and so forth, and GPS. What they do is they take all that driving data and are now selling it to Equifax. And so there was this case just the other day that a guy who never got into an accident, never got a ticket for the past, many years, all of a sudden saw a huge jump in his premium, right? In his premium for his insurance. And he called and he's like, why is this jumping? He's like, well, we got your data back. And it says that you're a high risk driver because of the way he accelerates, the way he brakes, but you didn't get into a crash. You didn't get any tickets and so on and so forth. Well, what he did was made a data request, and Equifax had his data. And what they're doing is GM and all these other new cars are selling the data of the way you drive to Equifax, where insurance companies can buy said data and then give it back to them and adjust their premiums that way.
Without telling you.
So,
Right.
and without
Well,
even
no, they do in
telling
the
you.
fine print. Like the fine print of these things is scary. And when you buy a car now, it says
but
this stuff.
that's already been proven to be when you get something. Matt said that this is done. More so selling software and that type of operating system. When you automatically click that you've read the disclaimer and the fine print and agree to it, when you've never read it, judges have decided in your favor that they know you're not actually going to read it, one, and two, you're not going to be able to access any of that without clicking that you agree to it. It's not giving you the choice.
Right. Yeah,
But-
I think that's some stuff that we should tweak more.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that we
For
got to
sure.
come back to. Right now, my parents are visiting, so I haven't had the time to do a lot of the actual shopping that I want to do, to include buying a Mega Millions or Powerball ticket. Right now, because there's been no winners this week of the jackpots, Mega Millions is at 977. Net, of course, is 977 million, almost $1 billion.
Which, if you took the direct payout, would not pay for Trump's civil trial penalties.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, well, actually,
And Powerball is at 750 million. Before we went live, Blake and I were discussing the pros and cons of each. And I think we both he kind of convinced me to switch from the annuity, which would, definitely give me a nice chunk of change every year for the rest of my life if I live to be 82. But I'm thinking I'm going to, because you can get the same thing by living off the interest if you take the lump sum, which is not the number that they're actually advertising. Matt, what are you going to do? This is going to be our hot mic for the week, by the way.
I'm taking the lump sum. There's no question. Give me my money. I'm not trusting them to be liquid all the way up until I'm done taking those payments. There's no way. Give me my money.
Blake,
Yeah,
saying
And then I'm going out and buying Bitcoin.
Yeah, I'm definitely taking the lump sum,
I gotta get back
investing
into
it,
that.
living on the interest. But look, I don't play the lottery because it's generally less financially well off and maybe less financially smart people that play the lottery. I would say that preys on poor people.
I've heard it say that it's a tax on poor people.
If you're not good with money, take the amortization and over the course of your life, because you'll just blow it all. And so I choose to not play the lottery. But if I did, yeah, definitely taking the lump sum and I'm investing it. Even at just 8%, you get more than what you would get annually.
Finally, something we all agree on. So with that, we will see you again next time. There's obviously going to be more Trump train stuff. And, Biden is, I think Biden is actually looking pretty sharp. Don't say anything because we're leaving on a positive note. But I think he's actually been looking pretty good, especially the way he busts his own stones in his commercials. Anyway, congratulations again to Matt Deemer for winning the Democratic nomination
Thank you,
in
sir.
Ohio. And welcome back, Blake. And we'll see you all again in a week right here for the Lunchtime Happy Hour on WWPR and WDJY and Yerg's Radio. See you again, gang. Thanks. All right, gang.